Welcome back on this Monday. Glad that you are joining us again. We are continuing through Luke chapter 2, starting with verse 33. So far, Simeon had just given the message that had been given to him, the Nunc Dimittis that we say, the song of Simeon about what the child would be, of how he would, that Simeon's eyes have seen salvation, that he would be a light to the Gentiles and glory to your people, Israel. We're going to continue a little bit, now we're just going to continue looking at verses 33 through 35, a little bit more on Simeon's words. And his father and mother marveled at what was said about him. And Simeon blessed them and said to Mary his mother, "Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rising of many in Israel, and for a sign that is opposed. And a sword will pierce through your own soul also, so that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed." Simeon, while the message was one of joy, he also gives a message here of one of disappointment, one of opposition, of division, even pain for Mary. Now, some have said that pain would be in the crucifixion when she would see her own son hanging on the cross. Others said that pain would be as she represents Israel and the pain of division, the pain that he brought to Israel, calling them from their sins to trust in him. I think it's more having to do with the crucifixion and the pain that would happen to her at that point. But there's a purpose for that pain, right? The very last verse 35, that's purpose. It would force people to contemplate their relationship to Jesus. He would force them to consider, do they trust him or not? Are they going to follow him and what he has done for them, or continue in their sinful ways? Let's continue now with verse 36. And there was a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years, having lived with her husband 7 years from when she was a virgin, and then as a widow until she was 84. She did not depart from the temple, worshiping with fasting and prayer night and day. And coming up at that very hour, she began to give thanks to God and to speak of him to all who were waiting for the redemption of Jerusalem. Anna was a widow. She had been a widow for 60 years, if you do the math, approximately. She most likely hears Simeon, although being a prophetess, she could also have had the revelation from God himself of what was going on there. But she heard the message, and like the shepherds, when she heard, she shared the message. However, there's a difference between them as well. Unlike the shepherds who heard of the birth, she heard of the redemption which would come through death. Perhaps she didn't understand that fully, but speaking of those who are waiting for the redemption of Israel, that makes us think of the death. So in the very first part of the life of this child was speaking of death. Let's continue now, verses 39 through 40. And when they had performed everything according to the law of the Lord, they returned into Galilee to their own town of Nazareth. And the child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. As we follow up on this passage a little bit, afterwards, it says that they returned into Galilee, their own town of Nazareth. Was that immediately? Well, we do know Nazareth was where he was raised. Luke doesn't say anything about the trip to Egypt. Why? It wasn't important to what he was saying. And most likely that he didn't have the opportunity to hear that directly from the wise men. Possibly that's part of the reason. But I think it's more, this is where the Spirit led him to talk to these people to get that information to go in. And we're going to, this idea of him growing strong, being filled with wisdom and the favor of God and the grace of God. As we look at this, that's going to be revealed even more that we dig into it tomorrow. So make sure you come back tomorrow. We'll continue wrapping up Luke chapter 2. We'll see you then. God bless.